Ed, if you'll tell us your age and birthplace.
Sure. So I am from Connecticut. My birthplace is in Danbury. I'm 58 years old, but when I do the RAM, I'll be 59.
Great, great. For those of you who don't know Ed Abdella, I'm going to have him tell us a little bit about kind of what got him into cycling. If you can tell us that, where that all took place.
Sure. So about probably around 13 or 14 years old, and I had some friends that were doing some pretty heavy cycling in Connecticut, and they were a little older than me, so I wanted to be with the older guys. And I asked my dad for a racing bike because the bike that I had wasn't good. I had a Huffy, and it just wasn't good enough. And he said, if you can ride 100 miles, I'll go out and buy you a racing bike. And so I went out early in the morning, and I rode from Connecticut all the way to Massachusetts. I think I was just about 12 or 13. Rode all the way down Route 7, all the way down the Housatonic River, went all the way to Massachusetts, and came all the way back. And that very next day, which was Saturday, I remember my dad packed us up in the truck, brought us to the local bike shop, and he bought me my first racing bike, which was a Peugeot. And then several years later, I was racing for teams and started riding for a team called Minosa in New Milford, Connecticut. And I bought my first Bianchi, which was a Specialissimo. And I remember the price tag was outrageous, but I bought it. And I remember going back, I was in college at the time, and I remember friends saying, boy, what a beautiful bike. How much did you spend on it? And I said, well, it wasn't much. It was a sponsored bike because I ride for the team Minosa. And that's kind of how I got started. But when I came down here to Mississippi, I stopped riding because I rode a couple of times. It was just a little dangerous. And, so I didn't ride. And I started running, and I was in charge of coaching a cross country team, and just started running and put the bike up, and got back from Iraq in 2005, and I ran probably another 2 or 3 months, and my back had given out. And it was at that point that I realized that my running days were over. And it wasn't too long after that, Bob Sample said, you should ride a bike to get in shape. And we went on a bike ride. I know exactly what we did. We did 7.5 miles out and 7.5 miles in, and I'm telling you, by the time I reached probably the 12th mile, I remember looking back, telling Bob, my legs feel weird. It's like I can't pump the bike anymore. He says, well, that's because you're spent. And I'm like, it can't be. So anyway, since that point, obviously 12 miles is not a real big deal now, but that's kind of how I got started in it. And as far as the endurance races, that just kind of blossomed. I started reading about certain rides that were longer than 100 miles, and said, I'd like to try one of those. And they're not really a race to me. It's more like a journey. It's something like, when you get out on the road, I just let myself go, and it's peaceful.
Yeah, I've heard you say that several times on some of our rides, and it allows you to kind of work some things out in your head. And I want to touch base on that as well in just a minute, but just kind of rewind it a little bit. So we saw that kind of endurance cycling seemed to be right from the get-go with your dad giving you a tall order to get your first bike. But then, if I remember correctly, you've had some stint doing some maybe some crit racing when you were younger.
Yeah, when I was real young, when I was riding for racing for Minosa, I did some criteriums, and we did some centuries and metric centuries. That's about as much as we ever rode.
Okay.
For races.
And then kind of touching base on your military background, because you had a long stint in the military. Do you mind telling us kind of how you got there and where you made it in the military? And
Yeah, so when after graduation, I joined the military straight out of high school. I did a small stint with the 82nd Airborne. We were in Grenada in 1983, and we got back that October. Actually, it was more like, because it was just before Thanksgiving, so we got back in November. And there was a couple of slots for Ranger School, and I had wanted to go, and it left the 82nd and went to the 3rd Battalion. And from there, I left the military in 88 and joined the reserves, finished my college degree in 92 up in Connecticut, and stayed in the reserves for 26 years. Was in the first Gulf War from 1990 to 91 while I was up in Connecticut, and then came down to Mississippi in 94 and continued my career with a unit out of Hattiesburg at Camp Shelby. Rose to the rank of first sergeant, then went to a unit out in Montgomery, Alabama, and we got called to active duty in 2003 to serve in Iraq, and we spent 15 months over there. I had 215 guys under my charge, and we went over and spent 15 months and came back, and about almost 2 years after that, I was able to retire, and I loved it. I loved my time in the military, so I'm, miss those times. They were good times.
Well, I think I've learned from being able to have the pleasure of riding with you that that mental fortitude that you have to kind of do these long distance events that you're participating in and completing. I'm sure a lot of that discipline came from cycling and being able to stay in the right headspace you need to, aside from the physical discipline it takes.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it's going to help. I was telling you earlier, this race across America in the summer of 2024, now that it's really come to fruition, it's scary. It's a scary race. It's a scary ride. A lot of it's got to do with, obviously, having a good, strong base, being prepared, as far as your training on every aspect. The other part is pure science, the food, the bike setup, and then the biggest part, and I don't think anybody really understands this, it's not just pedaling the bike. That's the easy part. The biggest part is going to be the crew, and that's where you guys come in. I don't think anybody, and I think the 359 people that have completed RAMs since 1982, every single one will tell you, if it wasn't for their strong crew, they wouldn't have finished. It's as simple as that, and I truly believe that. And so a lot of it's going to be, on the backs of the crew, of the 6 to 8 folks that go with me, yourself included. So and that's a tall ask. Everybody says, "Wow, that's going to be fun." And I was just reading earlier. They said, "This is a vacation. This is a vacation." It's not a vacation. You're taking your vacation days to be out there for 17 days because it's going to take us time to get there. We have 2 days of meetings, and then that Saturday in June, you leave. And you go 3,000 miles across the country, 12 states, 3 deserts, 3 mountains, and Kansas to Annapolis, Maryland. And that's not a vacation, I don't think, but we'll definitely keep everything in front of us and have a real good time doing it. And hopefully we'll, with luck, no injuries, we'll make it across the country in 12 days or less.
Well, I think that you're definitely headed in the right direction, and you've got the base to do it. And certainly your crew's going to be behind you. But no, there's no doubt it won't be a vacation for you for certain. You're going to have a lot of work ahead of you for those days. But we'll make the most of that. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing for this upcoming event in July and what it is to help you prepare for the race across America.
Okay. So all the rides that I do, these longer rides like the Natchez Trace, 444, or recently the 24-hour challenge I did. Meridian, Mississippi as a whole, but Meridian especially, has always been so good to me. And I noticed that a lot of these rides, because they're so expensive, a lot of folks will go and get sponsors. And I said, you know, if I'm going to have to, and I need sponsors, there's no way I can do it on my own as a school teacher. They're very expensive. And so I will do everything in my power to promote Meridian. And one of them is Dr. Pasha, has always sponsored my Natchez Trace rides. And any chance I get, I always try to promote his business, because he, you know, in essence, had saved my life. When I had some really bad back problems, instead of having surgery, he came in and said there is an alternative. With that said, Mary Hope has always been one of the most incredible treasures that Meridian has. And through the years, it's seen, you know, some decline. And we have an incredible board that's got together. A lot of them are younger folks, and they're real aggressive, and they want to put some more emphasis into Mary Hope. And I saw that, and I went up to Aubrey Sims and I said, I'm going to ride around Mississippi. It's about 1,200 miles, and I would like to attach it to your charity, and we'll raise money that way. And she said, okay, let's have a meeting. Now, when we went into the meeting, I remember sitting next to you, and I told the ladies, the first thing I said is, I'm going to do this regardless. You know, whether you know, can attach it or not, I'm going to do it. Why can't we make money off of it? So the purpose of me doing the bike around Mississippi is to raise money for preservation of Mary Hope, and also to maybe give a little awareness to other places. We're going to stop at a handful of places throughout Mississippi that are also preserving their heritage as well. And hopefully with that, you know, people will start looking at at what they have, and maybe spend some time. And you don't necessarily have to give money. Maybe you can volunteer a couple of weekends and go out there and do some beautification, you know, of the area. And so anything to get, you know, a positive feed for that. And that's why I wanted to do Bike Around Mississippi. But it does also help us figure out exactly what I'll be doing, because we're going to treat it just like it's the Race Across America. We're going to be on the bike for 20 to 21 hours. We're going to set up these preliminary time stations, and I've got to make them at certain times. Of course, you know that because you set the whole map up. So, you know, we'll do that with very limited sleep. And if we can do that for 5 days, you know, a little less than 5 days, then we're in the right ballpark to, you know, to do RAM the very next year.
Yeah, I think that from what I have seen and been able to participate with you, that this will be a great gauge to see your readiness for the RAM, and I think that you're going to be right there already. But kind of touching base on what you'd said earlier, there's no doubt that you have a heart for the community, and I think a lot of people see that. The many people I've met that know you and ask about you all seem to see that and appreciate that in you, that you want the best for this community. I know that you teach at a couple of different schools. You're full-time at, is it West Lauderdale?
Yes, sir.
Great. And but you've been at several other schools throughout the years here in Meridian, and I think you still have deep connections with all of those schools and want to see all of them to be successful. So that goes back into your heart for the community. Just kind of finishing up here, I know that you have a family, you have a son and a special lady in your life. Do you want to say anything to them?
Oh, yeah. So Hayes is 17, and he'll be with us for RAM, and I'm hoping that he'll be with us for the Bike Around Mississippi, at least a few days. And of course, my sweet Kathy is, been in my back, has been supporting me, ever since we were together. The first thing I did was after we started dating for a few months, I said, I have something to show you. And we started walking down the hallway of the house, and I brought her into the bike room. And I was expecting her to freak out because, you know, it's one thing to have a couple of bikes, but when you start getting into having 12 and 13 and 14 bikes, that's a little, you know, it's kind of overboard. But she looked at them and she had absolute love for them. She thought they were beautiful bikes, and she was excited about this room. And it's funny because every time she'll bring a friend over the house, you know, to pick me up or whatever, she's got to stop at the bike room and show her friend. We just had Laura Gittin just came over here, and this is the first time she saw it. And, you know, so, yeah, she's a character. She's been on the Natchez Trace 444 with me, and she's super excited about Ram. She's going to be one of the drivers. Her and one of her sorority sisters will be with us. So I'm excited. And like I said, Hayes will be a senior next year, so he graduates next year, and you know, his summer vacation is going to be going across the country, you know, following behind me. So it'll be kind of a neat thing before he heads off to college.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you definitely have a lot of people that are behind you and support you. We hope anybody listening to this and that will follow Ed's journey over the next couple of years. This July, in a few months, he'll be doing the bike around Mississippi, which will be approximately 1,200 miles outlining the state of Mississippi. And then next year, he'll be doing the Race Across America, which will be approximately 3,300 miles. So he's got quite a bit ahead of him and can use as much support as anyone will give him. As y'all have seen here, he has a heart for the community. So we appreciate any support. And Ed, we thank you for what you do.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.